What's up YouTube, ODST General back again with a video that's a bit different from my normal content. We're going to be doing a tier list. These seem to be all the rage nowadays, and I figured let's do something that's pretty unique to the channel. So I wanted to do a list of state police cars, the liveries. So we're going to be ranking state police car liveries. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So starting us off, we have Alabama. Alabama's pretty cool. It's, it's primary silver livery. You've got some, it's either black or blue on the hood. I'm not really sure which it is based off the picture I grabbed. It looks like a really dark blue. Goes back to the trunk. It looks pretty slick. It's fairly basic, fairly straightforward. For this one, I'm going to put it in the A tier, I think. And we're going to go to the next one. Yeah, there's really not much to say about it other than, yeah, it's a cool, I like silver, I like black, and it looks pretty cool. Then you have Alaska State Troopers. This one's white and black, kind of similar to the Alabama one in terms of the color pattern. With that being said, I'm not normally one for white primary police cars. They look boring, typically. I think Alaska State Troopers are definitely on the better end of it just because their logo really pops. I mean, just the fact that it's got this massive font for troopers and it's blue and yellow, it really stands out. It kind of redeems it a little bit. There is a bit of a golden stripe that runs along the car, so this is definitely on the higher end for like a white primary car, but to me that's still only like B tier at best. It's not a bad livery, but it's kind of still a boring livery just by virtue of being white primary. Then we have Arizona. Arizona is also silver and black. Arguably I actually like theirs a little bit more than Alabama, just because they do a little bit more interesting stuff. They've got that black diagonal instead of just on the hood and the trunk. They've got the diagonal text. They've got a pretty cool logo. I dig it. It's a cool looking car. Again, probably put it in A tier. It's a solid livery. I would put that above Alabama's. If it'll let me, we'll do it that way. There we go. Then we have Arkansas. So Arkansas, I don't know what it is about Arkansas. Like I said, I don't normally go for plain white cars. This one I also like a fair bit. I think it's the chevron, the blue chevron. I really like the color of blue. Blue and silver are some of my favorite colors. So the blue looks really slick on here. Nice blue, same for the logo. Really pops out. Not much else going on with the car, though. This one I would probably also put... Well, I think this one I'd probably put in C tier, to be honest. It's... Objectively, I think it's a little bit more boring than the Alaska State Troopers one. There's just not nearly as much going on. And because of that, I gotta rank it a little bit lower, even though I kind of like it. Then we've got California. So California is iconic, I think it's fair to say. It is kind of the go-to police car design. If you tell somebody to draw a police car, chances are you're going to get black and white that looks something like what the California Highway Patrol has. Maybe it's one door that's white, maybe it's two doors, but it's very similar to this pattern. Obviously, CHP uses just the one white door. Also, I grew up watching Chips on TV, and, because of Chips, this one has a special place in my heart. So I think with CHP, even though it's so basic, it's unique to state patrols. No state really has kind of just a regular black and white patrol car for their livery. So it actually makes it unique in terms of state troopers or highway patrols that they have this livery in California. So we'll go ahead, we're going to move on to Colorado. Colorado's is like a silver and blue. The blue runs along the top of the car. Their text is kind of plain. It's just black font. Kind of blends in a little bit, and then they've got like a highway patrol emblem on the front of the car, and then on the door there's the Colorado emblem for their highway patrol. It's a pretty decent car. It could be a little bit better, but it's still pretty solid. The silver and blue in this case, it's very similar to Alabama, so I still feel like it's going to rank in A tier, but it's not. I don't know, something about it just doesn't quite work. I think the blue might be a little bit different of a color, at least it is in this lighting. and it could look a little bit better. Also, I think the aspects of it that aren't just the paint job, but the font and stuff could pop a little bit better and stand out. So we're going to rank them down there. Then we have Connecticut. So Connecticut, as far as I could tell, I'm not really familiar with Connecticut's highway patrol. When I searched it up online, all I saw was regular cars with lighting systems. So they didn't have any marked vehicles, it looks like. Because of that, they're going to go in E tier. Like, they don't have any marked vehicles at all. Well, I don't really like the idea. I think it's important for police agencies, and I understand the importance of having unmarked vehicles and where they're useful in policing, but generally speaking, one, I think it looks better to have marked units, and two, as a policy, I think it's kind of appropriate to be there for people and be something that people can look out for and know is there, and is something that you can count on, and not having marked vehicles at all, especially when you're talking about police liveries without getting too political, but yeah, just talking in terms of police liveries, it's boring not having a marked vehicle. It's obviously, it's not a livery, so that goes into E tier, no question. Then we have Delaware. So Delaware is kind of like a dark blue. I think it might be black. I'm not really sure. Again, with the lighting in this, it's hard to tell. I'm not really familiar with Delaware State Police again. I've never seen one of their vehicles in person. So it could be like a dark blue or dark black. It's got a yellow stripe that goes across that pops out. Fairly decent icon, but kind of a basic paint job. So this one, I think this one goes into C tier. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing here, guys. I apologize. I've got the pictures pulled up just so I know which department's which. I actually pulled from the folder, not the tier maker list. So yeah, I think we're gonna put them into C tier. Actually, no, we'll put them into B tier because it's not bad. I do like the yellow, how much it pops. As basic as the car is, I just like having a little bit of extra bang in the livery. Then we have Florida. Florida is a black primary with kind of like a light tan or beige type of deal going on almost. It's pretty slick. It's definitely a unique paint job because it goes along the roof and along the top of the quarter panels, but nowhere else. It really stands out. You've got, well, I guess it goes on the trunk too, but yeah, it definitely really stands out as a unique livery. The Florida Highway Patrol logo really pops with being a blue, so it stands out. It's a different color, so it adds in some extra color variation there. The text and everything pops out. I really like the Florida Highway Patrol one, so we're going to put that one up to the top of A tier. It's not letting me drag to the front of A for some reason, so I have to move over every time. That's a little bit obnoxious, but oh well. Then we have Georgia State Patrol. Georgia State Patrol is a kind of a brighter blue and silver. Silver being the secondary color. This is a very unique livery. They've got almost like an orange text. Their text really pops out on the cars. It's got some sort of, it looks like digital thing on the bull bar that says State Patrol, which is kind of neat. I really like the Georgia State Patrol one. That one's also A tier for me, and I actually think I like that one a little bit more than Florida even, just because it has that extra color. It really pops out. It really stands out, and I really like that in a livery. I really like when a livery stands out, as long as it's not like too tacky. And for me, Georgia State Patrols works without kind of falling into that too tacky, area. Then we have Honolulu Police, which isn't technically state police, but as far as I could tell, Hawaii doesn't technically have a state police. It's just like an island police, so most people seem to consider Honolulu to be the state police of Hawaii. As far as their car goes, it's white with a blue stripe. It looks like a lot of city police cars I've seen, and that's not a bad thing, but it also doesn't really stand out as something that's really unique or interesting as far as a livery goes. It's kind of a forgettable cop car in my opinion, or forgettable livery, so that one we're going to put in C tier, just because it's average in pretty much every sense in my mind. It's decent enough, but it could be a lot more interesting too at the same time. Then we have Idaho. Idaho is another black primary. It's got some white stripes, a couple dual chevrons that go up and meet on the hood from the back of the car. They've got the state police at an angle with a image of Idaho and then their department logo in the center there. It's a pretty slick looking car for being an all black one too. Again, I'm not a big fan where it's just all one color pretty much the whole way through. But this one's definitely more on the interesting side. This one I would actually probably rank up into B tier, just because there's enough aspects of it between everything that it definitely works kind of on the better side. Then we have Illinois State Police, and Illinois State Police, it's white primary. It's, again, my least favorite kind of police car, generally speaking. They get a little bit of stuff going on with their logo. Their older designs were a little bit better because they used to have like a yellow stripe that ran across the car. I don't know if they still do this, and that's one tricky thing when doing a video like this, is because a lot of these departments have multiple liveries because they're still running cars that are, in some cases, 10, 15 years old. So, you get a lot of variation in the liveries with these departments. So I tried to just go with the most recent stuff I could really find for the most part. Again, not being super familiar with all these departments, I don't know if these are just kind of one-offs in the libraries or not. But yeah, Illinois State Police, being just basic white, they do get a little bit of leeway because they do have kind of a nicer logo that's kind of stands out, makes it a little bit more unique. But I think, honestly, I think I have to put it into D tier still, because it's just, again, at the end of the day, it's pretty much just a basic white cop car. There's not much going on. And then we go to Indiana and its neighbor, and they've basically got the same thing going on. It's just a nearly all white cop car. They've got kind of a Delta thing on the side, and they've got the Indiana State Police. There's a little bit more color in the logo, variation and stuff like that. It's still so basic, though. It's really hard to put that, so that one's going to go into D tier, but we'll put that one. It's kind of tough. I really view these two as more or less equal because they are so similar. I think we'll put that one on par with the Illinois State Police, essentially, because they're so similar in many respects. There's a little bit more color in the logo, I feel like, so maybe Illinois has a slightly less edge than the Indiana one, but yeah, they're so close together, it's really hard to differentiate for me. Then we have Iowa, and Iowa is a silver primary, or at least the image I have is. I don't know if they do any other colors besides silver. It looks like, based off some of the images I saw, that might be the case. This one is absolutely boring. Even their logo on the side is boring. I mean, it's just the plainest shield I've ever seen. This one's E tier for me. I love the color silver, and I would normally rank it a little bit above just like a white car, but because their shield is so boring and there's nothing else redeeming about this, I'm not going to give them a pass just on it being silver. I can't do that, so that goes into E tier just for them having such an absolutely boring shield. And another one that's really low on the tier list for me here right after is Kansas. Kansas has a slightly more interesting shield, but still looks really kind of generic for like a policing shield, in my opinion. I guess there's only so many different shields you're going to have in policing. I mean, every fire department uses the Maltese cross, basically, so I can't bag too much on a department for using a shield that looks generic. But at the same time, when you already have like an all-white cruiser, and then you have kind of on the more generic side of a shield that's also very monotone in color, it's really hard to appreciate that one at all. So that one's going to also go into E tier. And again, pulling from the wrong list here, just keep doing that. They're going to go above Connecticut because Connecticut's awful, but they're going to go under Iowa just because, again, I like silver at least, so I'll give them a little bit of a pass. I'll put Iowa still at least above Kansas and the other stuff in E tier, at least from what we've gotten so far. Then there's Kentucky State Police. So this one's kind of a different color. This one's like more of a regular gray as opposed to a silver. It doesn't look very reflective. There is a very bright blue stripe that goes along the side with some high contrast yellow. It really pops out with the logo and stuff. I really like this look. I kind of a little bit of a darker paint job, but it still really pops and stands out. Looks like they run all blue lights, which is also kind of interesting to me. This one I got rated a little bit higher, I think. This one, honestly, I think this one even goes... I'd probably put this one... like right here. I'd put that in A tier. And I think that's a pretty solid one. I really like when the colors and stuff pop out. It looks unique, which is also bonus points. So we're going to rank them a little bit higher. Then we get to Louisiana. Again, another basic white police car. They've got a little bit of extra color. They have Louisiana State Police and State Trooper in red. They've got their state on there, which is blue. So it does inject a little bit of extra color and stuff in there. It's pretty basic otherwise, but I think this one we'll put them up in the top of D tier. Again, it's mostly just a basic white police car. There's no secondary colors or anything in there. It's boring. And here's the thing with these white police cars, I get it. It's very responsible because they save money, which saves taxpayers money. And it's the right thing for these departments to do. It is. But in terms of just looks and appearance, they are so boring. And it's unfortunate, but you just can't really change that. So then we have Maine. Maine is a single color. Its logo also kind of blends in with the color. It's a little bit different of a shield. It gets a little bit of bonus points just because they went with such a unique color. They went with this kind of like light metallic or reflective blue. It really stands out from a crowd just based on the color choice because no other department really has a color quite like this. With that being said, again, just I prefer having, like a secondary tone, even 2 or 3 colors on a cop car, really mixing it up. And they don't really have that going on here. So I think with Maine, we have to kind of dock them some points for that. But they do get points for being a little bit higher. So I think we'll put them into high C tier. Oh, pardon me, guys. So then we get to Maryland here. Maryland's got kind of an interesting color. They've got what's almost like a gold and black color situation going on. It's fairly unique looking shield too. It looks like it really pops with the yellow and black, and then they've got some red and white. It's not the best looking shield. The colors kind of clash a little bit, it almost feels like to me. I don't know, something about these colors, they don't work quite as well as they could, but they definitely are. I like the paint job. It's not the worst, so I do like them. I would put them into B tier for sure, and I think we'll put them up at the top of B tier currently. And then after Maryland, we have Massachusetts. Now, Massachusetts, I'm really struggling with Massachusetts because on the one hand, I like the quarter panels and the rear door. That's a really nice looking blue. Then they go with this lighter blue, which is also, again, fairly unique. There isn't really any other departments that quite have a blue like this. But because they've already got blue on the quarter panels, having this lighter blue looks off. And then they also have a different blue on their shield, on the door. And it doesn't really work for me as much as it should, but it is unique. It stands out in a crowd, and I do like that aspect of it. I think for them, just because it does stand out, because they kind of take a very unique look that's kind of easily identifiable, we're going to put them up into B tier. But we're going to probably put them... Well, we'll pull them higher in B tier just because it is so unique looking. We'll put them above Alaska, but below Maryland. Then that brings us to Michigan. So Michigan, I used to actually hate Michigan's police cars. The single rotary light, something about it just always looked so goofy. If you guys watch my channel, if you've watched it for a long time and watched it when I did like GTA 5 LSPDFR content, I used to always play retro cop cars. I love rotary lights and stuff. Just having a modern car seems so weird. Michigan, however, has really grown on me over the years. I always kind of liked the blue color of their cars, and then having the bright yellow outline on their shield and everything, it really pops. And then you're adding the rotary light, which is custom made for them. It really just adds an extra layer to it. And then they've got whatever the stop thing is on the hood. It's such a weird thing to me. I don't know why the purpose of that stop thing is there. I guess if the vehicle's like angled out in such a way that it's parked across the road, the idea is that you're supposed to stop at that point, maybe. But I feel like you're probably going to stop or you're going to hit the cop car either way, and putting that stop sign on there seems kind of unnecessary or redundant. But it does make for a unique looking car. I know it's not necessarily technically part of the livery with the light and the stop sign, but it really does kind of add to the car for me. Already kind of a nice looking blue, and again with the shield being high contrast and everything, I got to put Michigan at the top of S tier. Again, it's something I used to actually hate, but it's really grown on me over the years. And the bubblegum rotator, the LED rotator that they have is really a nice callback to, you know, older style cop cars, and those are definitely the ones that I love, is, you know, all the cop cars out of the 60s and 70s. So then we have Minnesota. Minnesota has kind of the classic livery layout with the white door and then the different color for the primary, very similar to CHP, but they go with a very unique color because they go with this metallic red. There isn't really any other department that has anything quite like this either, so they definitely stand out. They're up there with the likes of, you know, Maine or Georgia, where it really stands out in a crowd of cop cars. You're going to look at this one. This one's going to really stick out just by virtue of being red. I do like this one. The red works for me a little bit more than it would just because it's metallic, kind of, or it's a high shine red. If this was like a matte red or something, I probably wouldn't like it as much, but because it is very reflective, I do like it a lot more. The logo probably could use a little bit more color, I think, but with that being said, it doesn't really clash too much or anything, so the logo's pretty decent on there too. I really like this one. I think Minnesota, we're going to rank them a little bit higher. I think we'll rank them probably under Florida. It's a good-looking car, really stands out, but not necessarily my favorite either. And then after Minnesota, we have Mississippi. Wow. Mississippi. I'm trying to make up new states here, guys. Ignore that, though. So Mississippi, kind of gray that's sort of similar to Kentucky's, a little bit different. Almost looks like it's got like a tinge of brown or something in there, just very tiny amount. It's kind of like this off gray or like a warm gray going on. Bright yellow logo in the shape of the state. Then they've got State Trooper on a blue line with a red outline. Really, what makes this car for me at all is that blue and red line. I don't know what it is about it, but it really stands out. It would be kind of a boring car otherwise, but it does help a lot, especially when you see the car up close. Further out, like that Crown Vic in the background, you can't really tell the red outlines there so much, so it does kind of lose it, but up close it actually looks pretty good. I think with them, we're going to put them... I think we're going to put them up into B tier even, but we're going to put them at like the end of B tier because it doesn't work quite as well from a far distance, but again, with the yellow and the logo, they've got a variety of colors and stuff. They've got a lot of things working for them that I like. So then, after Mississippi, we have Missouri, and black primary. I'm not really sure. It looks like it's like a blue or a green kind of backer on the logo behind the text, yellow text, and then like kind of a white background. To be honest, this thing looks cheap to me, is kind of the word that comes to mind. I don't really like it when they have a box just around the text because it makes it look like they printed out the text on a giant sticker, cut out the sticker, and then slapped it on. They've got that going on with the State Trooper logo and the shield on the car. So I think with that one, we're going to have to put that one into E tier because it does just look so absolutely cheap. They do get a few points because it's a black car as opposed to a white car, I guess. It's so arbitrary, but again, it could look a lot better. I want to put them under Iowa just because it does look absolutely cheap as far as the logo. Their shield looks more interesting, but because it looks like a sticker somebody cut out and the colors don't really work that well together, I want to put them a little bit lower into E tier. We're going to zoom that in too a little bit for you guys so you can see it a little bit better, hopefully, because I'm looking at these pictures blown up on the other monitor, and I've got a list of all the state names just so I don't get these confused, because obviously trying to memorize all these cars that I don't see all the time, especially in smaller pictures, is really difficult. So yeah, anyways, then we have Montana. Montana is a black primary color again. They've got a yellow stripe that runs along, kind of highlighting some of the contours or some of the lines on the Charger. I don't know if these are replicated on any other of their vehicles, so I don't know if any of their like SUVs or if they still use Crown Vics or anything else like that. I don't know if they still sport anything like this or if those vehicles are just all pure black. But in the case of this Charger, it looks pretty good. I also really like their text. They have a small shield that's here. That's pretty interesting. That's like yellow and blue. It kind of reminds me almost of the CHP shield a little bit. But what really works for me, though, is the font. They've got like this kind of almost orangish looking color with like a darker like gray or black in the font, and then like a really thin white outline or something, and there's gradients in there. That's really what wins me over on this car. It would be kind of a boring design otherwise, I think, but for them, we're going to put them up into B tier because I think it's a very interesting font. I do like the yellow line. It works for being kind of more minimal side of a cop car, but it's also not as easily identifiable as, say, Massachusetts, Maryland, stuff like that. You know, or in the colors, well, pretty decent. They don't really pop as much as these other departments in the A tier. So then we have Nebraska, again, another single solo color primary vehicle, this one being black. To be honest, this one's kind of in the same tier as Mississippi for me because it just looks cheap in many respects, and it gets a little bit cut off in the thumbnail. But you can see on their state troopers here, there's like it's a white text with a black outline, or like a black drop shadow, and then a white outline around the drop shadow. So it's white, black, and then white. And then their shield kind of does the same thing, and then they have emergency cell star 55, and then there's like some of the white outline on cell goes up into emergency, but it doesn't look good. Again, it looks cheap to me, and especially with it just being a solo color, it kind of hurts it more. So honestly, it looks a little bit better than Mississippi's, but it still doesn't look as good as pretty much any other department. So yeah, we're gonna put them into E tier too. Honestly, I feel it's kind of weird that like E tier is actually bigger than D tier. I should probably move some of these up into D tier. Maybe we'll do that here in a minute. But yeah, okay, where are we at? So we just put down Nebraska. So we have Nevada. So Nevada is like a dark blue, I want to say, and now I'm not really sure because the pictures I've looked at, it's Nevada, so I don't know if it's just dirt on the cars reflecting in the light or like showing up odd in the light, or if it's like a metallic looking paint job, because I've seen a lot of police departments do that too. But it's like a dark blue. They've got a couple of white stripes that run up the door, the yellow text, and a pretty good looking shield. I really like the Nevada State Police vehicles. Again, still not like the best police vehicles ever. It could really stand out more in a crowd, but I do like them a lot. I think we're going to put them in A tier, just behind like Kentucky, because I do like this blue. I feel like stands out a little bit more. The gray's a little bit more unique. The blue in this is so dark it almost looks black, but it's still better looking in my opinion. Then that brings us to New Hampshire. A pretty unique looking color setup here. They've got a nice paint job. They've got the hood and the roof. I'm not sure if their trunk is also included. It might just be the roof and the hood, but it's almost kind of like a bronze or copper color, like a metallic or shiny green primary with a yellow bordering on almost golden, font. It looks pretty freaking good. It's not like the greatest color selection ever, but it works for me. I think for them, we're going to put them into B tier, and the colors work better than the other stuff in B tier together, I think. So we're going to put them at the top of B tier. So New Jersey, white primary again. They've got blue and yellow stripes, blue and yellow text, so it does pop a little bit more. Honestly, I think as far as New Jersey goes, even though I don't like these white primaries, theirs is definitely on the better end because of that blue and yellow stripe. It adds a little bit more color, has a bit more going on. I would actually probably even rank them above Honolulu for that, and maybe even above Maine. And you know what? We're gonna put them at the top of C tier, I think. Yeah, I think they've earned the top of C tier just because that blue and yellow contrasts so much. It pops a lot, and it's a pretty unique look. It's something that's easily identifiable, and it does stand out for being a white primary cop car. It would still not be as good as a non-white primary, in my opinion. but because they do have some other colors, they're going to go a lot higher than a lot of these other departments. Then we have New Mexico, which is like a black primary. Now, the one I have a picture of here almost looks like it's carbon fiber, like for the vehicle. And that's got like a white hood. It's got a couple of dual chevrons, like some of the other departments we've seen. Bold yellow text. It's a slick looking car. I don't know if this is actually their standard. This almost feels like it could be a unique vehicle, but I couldn't find a lot of pictures of the New Mexico State Police up like a quick cursory search. So I think this one, it's pretty decent looking, but it's also at the same time, it's still kind of generic looking. So I think for them, we're going to put them in the middle. We'll put them at like the top of C tier, I think, just because it could be a little bit more interesting as far as the colors and stuff go, but it is pretty good too. Then we go on to New York State Police, State Troopers, a darker blue color, bold yellow stripe, yellow logo, really pops out on that blue. They've also got kind of a unique light bar. I don't really know too much about their light bar, but it's supposed to be like a high-rise light bar, I think. I don't know exactly how these work. I know that I've played around with them in Emergent. I see where they had them, but it's been so long I can't remember. Like, I think they actually do like raise up or something, or there's like stuff you can do with them, which is unique to them. And to be honest, even if you didn't, just they stand out in like comparison or contrast to a lot of other light bars. I really do like New York's. I think they're pretty good looking for being fairly simplistic. I think we're going to put New York. New York's kind of tough because it is, like I said, simplistic, but I like it. I'm debating between like A and B tier. I think we're going to put them into A tier here. You start looking at these, and some of these look pretty good at first, and then you start looking at them in contrast to some of the other ones as you go through, and suddenly they almost feel like they don't hold up quite as well. So after New York, we have North Carolina. So North Carolina, kind of similar to Arizona, that they've got this black diagonal going across on a silver primary. They got a bright yellow logo with like blue. The colors clash a little bit. They don't work quite as well as certain other cars with the black and silver. The yellow, just something about it doesn't work quite as well. It'd be better, I guess, if it was all white or maybe like a red or something. I don't know. The yellow just feels a little bit off in terms of the color of the car, but still a pretty good one. Obviously, I really liked, Alabama and these other cars in the A tier. Something about this one doesn't look quite as good, and I feel like it's probably honing in on it. It's probably the logo, but it's still a pretty solid car, so I think we'll put them up into to B tier. And then after that, we have North Dakota, black primary. Their logo stands out a little bit more. It's a Native American war chief. They've got like a orangish kind of text, so it's kind of an interesting logo. It doesn't look like their their state trooper font was just cut out on a sticker and like stuck onto the car, but the paint job is really boring on this one. I'm going to put this one into D tier, but I think they're pretty solid on the top of D tier, just on the basis of the shield on the car is interesting enough to save them some face. It's actually it's a picture. It looks pretty cool, but that's about it. That's really not much else nice to say about that particular vehicle. So we'll move on to Ohio. Ohio State Police is a silver primary. Now they do have some like pinstriping or some paint going on with a couple of double white lines on the top and on the bottom that cuts out on the door. The only issue I really have with this, and this paint job would look a lot better, is if they went with like a color that actually was like kind of a brighter color, high saturation color, like a yellow or a blue or red or anything that was a color, but they went with white. And it just almost blends in with the silver paint job. It doesn't look very good. Now their state highway patrol logo with the wings coming out of the wheel. A couple other departments use similar logos. I really like that. That's always a cool looking logo. A pretty neat looking car, but because the paint job does kind of blend in a little too much, I have to kind of dock them some points in my head, and so I think because of that, we're going to have to rank them a little bit lower. I think we're going to have to actually put them into C tier, but we'll put them at the top of C tier because I do like silver, and I like the logo and stuff. I just think that if they made some color tweaks, it would be a lot better looking of a car. The particular paint and stuff would be unique as far as the design goes, although I think they could maybe come up with something a little bit more interesting than the thin dual lines or something better looking. But again, it's got a lot of potential there and just room for improvement, but not much to really make it improve quite a bit, I think. So then we go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, another black primary, extremely boring compared to a lot of these, because it's, again, like many states, it's an outline of the state. It just says Oklahoma Highway Patrol in very plain text. There's so very little going on. There's not much color because it's just black and white, and it's mostly just black. But with that being said, it looks more professional than many of the cars in E tier. Like, the cars in E tier are generally there because they look almost cheap as far as their liveries go, like generic and stuff like that. I wouldn't say Oklahoma's livery looks generic. It's just kind of boring. So we'll put them at the bottom of E tier. Their logo's not even quite as good looking as like Indiana, Louisiana, Illinois. If their logo was more interesting or there was a bit more color, I'd probably put them at the top of D tier just because, again, I like a black livery compared to a white livery. But I'd rather have like a blue or silver or just multiple colors instead as far as the livery goes. That's just my personal taste on it. So after that we have Oregon, or Oregon, I guess, depending on how you want to pronounce it. There's a silver and black. They've got a kind of a thinner black logo that kind of blends in a little bit with the car. I do like this. Again, it highlights the features of the Charger. So again, I don't know if this is a unique paint job to the Charger or if they have a similar but maybe slightly different one for the other vehicles in their fleet. But this one does work for me, although it is at the same time kind of on the boring side compared to some of the other cars too, because there isn't as much going on. So I think this one we're going to rank at the top of C tier. And then moving on, we've got Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania, it's kind of a darker gray, like a charcoal color almost. Then they've got like a lighter gray for Trooper, and then kind of like a light yellow and stuff going on a black shield and stuff. So the shield tends to pop out a little bit more. Everything else about the car kind of blends in a little bit. Actually, that lighter gray for Trooper seems to be the same one as the dash that goes across, because there's a line that goes across the top of the door. And it looks to be the same color, and you can tell in the lighting at the front and that front quarter panel, it almost blends in and looks like the same color with this picture. So because of that, it's not the worst color pattern, and it's actually kind of a pretty decent looking car. It actually reminds me of some cars, like maybe even like the NYPD paint job if it was different colors. But because the colors blend in so much, it really hurts it in my mind. So I think we're going to put them in a C tier because it's not bad, but it also just blends in so much. It really kind of does hurt the car. I think we'll put them there. I think we'll put them like mid, kind of like a little bit lower mid C tier, just because it does blend together so much, and it does feel kind of very similar to NYPD. And I don't know which one came first or which is a knockoff of which. If either of them, they might be some other department that started using that livery first. I don't know. So we go to Rhode Island State Police. Not much going on with theirs either. This is kind of like a silver gray primary. Nice looking blue for the font with a white outline. Kind of a lighter blue in the shield with white. I don't know. Again, there's a lot of blue, a lot of just basically 2 or 3 different colors that are kind of muted and everything. This one doesn't work for me because it's kind of plain and boring. The color choices are decent enough, but you know, having a little bit more color splashed on there or something just to make them look a little bit more unique. The shield's kind of generic looking. So I think for Rhode Island, we're going to rank them a little bit lower. We'll put them into C tier, probably near the end of C tier, I think. So then after that, we go to South Carolina. South Carolina's got a silver car. They've got a couple of blue stripes that run along it. And then they've got like golden box around State Trooper, and then kind of the golden primary color for the logo and everything. This is a slick looking car. I like the blue, the lines and the stretched out wing and everything. It makes it look like it's gonna go fast. I do like that aspect of it. It's a pretty simple paint job, but it works for me. The colors and stuff work well together. They pop out fairly well on the car. So this one actually I want to rank a little bit higher. It's not quite as good as some of the other stuff, but I think this one we're going to put up into B tier, and we'll actually put them up a little bit higher in B tier. I'm actually thinking we'll put them up at the front of B tier here, looking at it. The colors and stuff work for me personally. It's not maybe the most exciting paint job in B tier, but it's better than the other paint jobs in B tier, I think, for the most part, and there's a little bit more interesting stuff going on with them. So then we go over to South Dakota, and South Dakota, I think, is a black primary. It might, again, it's hard to tell with some of these cars. Some of them are like blue, but they're really dark blues, and it's almost like bordering on black. This one looks like it's black, but it's kind of hard to tell because the color seems a little bit off in the image, so it's kind of hard to tell with the lighting. They've got almost like this orange text pops out. The text is kind of interesting because it is bold and does stand out on the car a lot. The car's paint job itself is obviously not very exciting, and their shield on the front of the car is fairly small. It's an upside down triangle, and it's kind of hard to tell what's going on because it is on the smaller side. The colors could maybe be a little bit better, but not the worst, not the best. This one I would say is probably C tier. I would probably rank them above a couple of the other departments in C tier, but maybe below main, so kind of the lower end of C tier. Again, main gets a lot of passes for being just kind of a boring car otherwise because of the color. It's literally the color of their cop cars. If it was nearly any other color, I think main would be down in like D or even E tier. But it's not. It's a very unique, like, light blue color that no one else really uses. So yeah, anyways, then we're off to Tennessee. Tennessee has definitely a car that pops out a lot more. Just at initial grab, it's got multiple colors. They use kind of a unique color for their primary. It's not completely dissimilar to Florida's secondary color for their primary, which is kind of like a creamy color, again, like a light khaki. This one's a little bit closer to like an off-white, almost yellowish color though. Then they've got like the darker yellow, kind of bordering on a golden almost color, and then the black on the roof, the hood, the trunk, and then the couple of the double lines. This one really pops. The colors are high contrast. I really like the Tennessee State Trooper cars. They are actually... this one's tough. I would say they're up there. I like the colors actually for them. Maybe even a little bit better than Minnesota and stuff. Normally those would be colors I wouldn't go for, but honestly, the more I look at this one, the more I like it. Just, there's a lot of stuff. It's a unique paint job. It really stands out. The colors are high contrast. It's a cool looking car, and it's hard for me to deny that. So we'll take a look at Texas next. Texas is a black primary. They've got some white on the hood, white on the roof. I don't know if it extends to the trunk again. I haven't seen any images of the trunk. As far as the logo, it's another outline of the state. It says, Texas Department of Public Safety, and then Highway Patrol in kind of a plain text. State Troopers kind of plain text. It's it's fairly good. It's not really bad. It stands out, I guess, in many respects, but the colors, again, kind of boring choice of colors under normal circumstances. But something about Texas's works for me pretty well too. But it's also not quite as good as a lot of the other departments. So I think for Texas, we're going to put them in the middle of B tier. Then we go to Utah. So I'll be honest, prior to this, looking at this list, I used to see Utah, highway patrol cars somewhat regularly, and I used to actually remark at how much I hated these things every time I saw them, because they are plain white cars, and it's Utah Highway Patrol on a beehive. It is such a boring design. It's so perfect for Utah, because Utah's kind of a vanilla state because of, you know, a lot of their religious and moral reasoning tends to reflect in their laws and stuff like that. And so there's this kind of image that, you know, Utah's not a very edgy state, and you really kind of see that reflected in their state patrol cars. Now, with that being said, having looked at this list and seen cars like Ohio and Kansas and stuff, it's hard for me to bash on Utah's quite as much, because even though the paint job is really boring, still being just a basic white, I'll give them some credit for having a beehive for the shield, because that's pretty unique as far as these cop cars go. With that being said, it is still just a basic white cop car, and there isn't much color. It's just the yellow is the only other color with the black. Because of that, we're going to rate them a little bit lower. Part of me is really tempted to put them into E, but it does look professionally done, at least. It doesn't look like somebody, again, cut out a box or a sticker and threw it on there. So we'll put them in D tier, but we'll put them above Oklahoma just because they have that little splash of color in there. They've got the yellow in there, which is more than Oklahoma can say. And I think the beehive is more interesting than a state outline, because everybody's either got their department shield or an outline of their state, and, you know, Utah's like, let's put a beehive on there. So we go to Vermont, and Vermont, not too dissimilar from what was it, New Hampshire. Green and yellow. Theirs was like kind of a metallic green and like bronze or copper, so kind of similar colors, a little bit different. Vermont's is more matte. Theirs isn't really reflective or metallic. The colors tend to pop a little bit more. The yellow is a lot brighter, but it's also just a stripe on the side of the car. I don't really like the green quite as much as I do on New Hampshire's, but I think the yellow definitely looks a little bit nicer than the copper or bronze. So this one's kind of a weird spot for me. Their logo also is fairly green, and then the yellow outline kind of helps it a little bit, but it does kind of blend in with the car just a teeny bit. It's an interesting shape. So Vermont, I think Vermont we're gonna have to put into like, I don't know, Vermont's a tough one. Part of me wants to put it into like C tier, and then part of me wants to put it like high B tier. It's so weird. Like, just there's certain aspects of it that really work for me, and some of it just doesn't. I think the fair thing to do is we'll put them into B tier above Texas. B tier has gotten to actually be our biggest tier here, which is kind of funny. It probably should be C tier, but it's not. Obviously, the average skews towards B in this case for me. Then we have Virginia State Police, which is a silver and blue. It says Virginia State Police in a little bit lighter of a blue, and then a yellow and black. Shield's a bit on the smaller side. It's kind of plain looking. I do like the paint job, goes across the whole top of the roof. It is fairly basic looking, especially in comparison to a lot of the other cruisers we've looked at now, especially. I think for them, we're going to put them at the top of C tier, because they do have that blue in there. I like it. It would be nicer if it was a little bit lighter of a blue, I think. If they had the blue that their font is in, that kind of like lightish, or more of a regular blue as opposed to like the dark blue or royal blue that they have for the top of the paint, if that was on the top of their car, that would look really good. It would look even better if that blue was the primary color for the car, the silver was the roof and the rest of the top of the car, and then the text was in like white or was in the gold or something. I think that would look really awesome, but that's not what it looks like. So we can't really give them that. So we go from Virginia to Washington, and Washington's is pretty bad, I'm not going to lie. Just, again, they've got the box around State Patrol that makes it look like somebody just cut out a sticker and put it on by hand. It's not like really officially stenciled or anything. It looks kind of cheap. It's a white primary. It's just white and black. There's not really any color variation. There's a teeny bit of gray and stuff thrown in there for the shield and behind the State Patrol on that box, but there is really not much going on there. So I think for them, we're going to have to put them into E tier. And because it's a white car that also looks cheap, we're going to have to put them lower in E tier. I think they're going to go just above Connecticut. Connecticut really deserves its own tier. Like, if I had an F tier for this, Connecticut would be there. Connecticut shouldn't even be named on this list, really, honestly, but they are. So then we have West Virginia with a kind of a darker royal blue for the primary color, and then looks to be like a golden color. This image I have is really small even on my computer, so it's not a great image. What you guys are seeing there, and the screen looks much better than what I see blown up. Yeah, this one kind of works for me. The logo looks to pop out pretty well because of the yellow and gold outline. The state police is in that same color. The colors are pretty consistent throughout. They've got not only the paint on the roof, but they've got the diagonal lines that run across the back, and the blue is really nice looking on this particular vehicle. I think for them, we've got to rank them a little bit on the higher side. I actually think we'll put them, I think at the top of B tier. Well, you know what? We're going to put them up in A tier. Yeah. I'm looking at these other cars here. I think we need to do some rearrangements. We've already been going for a while, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on rearranging, but we got to finish out these last couple states first. Wisconsin. Wisconsin used to be my old favorite patrol cars. They used to have these like Viper metallic blue paint jobs on their Crown Vics when they still had those. As they phased those out, they've gone with this darker blue. It doesn't look quite as good in the sun. It's not a bad looking blue. It works well with the white, and then the bright red for state patrol and everything makes it really pop. It looks good. And then they've got yellow and black hazard striping on the back that I've seen. I think they still have that on these current patrols. So I'm going to keep Wisconsin in S tier, but they're definitely not taking first place. I want to probably put them back in the end of S tier, because even though I really, really like them, and I'm kind of nostalgic having seen those, a decent amount growing up, they're not as good as they used to be. There's no denying that. Then we have Wyoming Highway Patrol, which is a black primary. They've got a pretty big yellow kind of slash or whatever you want to call it going across the car. They've got the Wyoming Highway Patrol and angle going up across that. And then again, they've got kind of a similar shield to the CHP. It's not a bad looking car. As far as being like a black primary color, this one's actually pretty solid. So I think this one we're going to put into C tier. But because it is black primary, it could stand out a little bit more. I think we're going to put them right there. We're going to put them near the top of C tier. Okay, so that's all the states. So let's take a look at this. There's a couple, like I said, I want to rearrange, because honestly, going through this list and seeing, sometimes I forget just how many black and silver cars there are on these state patrols. Obviously, there's a lot of white cars and there's a lot of plain black cars, but there's also a lot of silver cars. Basically, those are like the four primary colors of state patrol vehicles: is white, then black, then silver, then blue. You've got Georgia, Maine, Michigan with blue primaries, or West Virginia too, New York as well. There's a whole bunch of states with the blacks, a whole bunch of states with the whites, obviously, as you guys can see. Minnesota really does stand out with that red. Tennessee does too, with kind of that like creamy white, almost bordering on like a yellow, or and like almost kind of looking brown with their black, just because of the off-white, kind of throwing things off a little bit. I think we need to reassess a couple of these, though. Specifically, I'm looking at Colorado and Alabama. Again, they don't hold up quite as well when taken in comparison to all these black and white cop cars. I think we're going to move both of these two down a little bit. I do like Arizona's, even though it's still black and silver, and it's very similar to some of the cars. Something about the angle of that, and maybe it also helps that it's a good quality picture, but Arizona's looks pretty aggressive. But we're going to still move them down into A tier a little bit. And we're going to do this. We're going to rearrange A tier a little bit here, like this. Alaska's going to probably stay where it's at in B tier. It's probably, I give it a little bit more credit, but it's just because for somebody who does a white primary color, like, they definitely have the nicest looking white primary colored cop car, in my opinion. It's the best of the worst, arguably. So they'll stay in B tier. But what else do we got here? We're going to move them down to C tier here. And I think everything else is more or less pretty good to go. So yeah, I mean, definitely this is my list again. My S tier being Michigan, CHP, and the Wisconsin Highway Patrol. Arguably, Georgia should be up there. The blue and silver, sometimes I look at it and it looks really good. Sometimes I look at it and the blue looks like maybe a bit too much. So maybe just a little less saturation in the blue in their case, I think would serve it pretty well. Just because the silver is it's kind of a muted color, so the blue almost feels like too much because it almost overwhelms the silver in color, if that makes any sense to me. But I still do really like it. So yeah, Georgia definitely could be interchangeable with S tier in my opinion. Florida's pretty freaking good. Part of what really works for Florida though is simply the fact that they have a very unique layout for their paint, with it being on the roof and then part of the quarter panel. No one else really does a paint job like that, so it definitely stands out as far as being unique in that sense, and that sends it a long way. Also, their secondary color choice being that kind of like creamy off-white color, almost, you know, bordering on yellow or khaki or whatever. It stands out. It's definitely a less used color, so they get bonus points for that. You know, Minnesota, like I said, very unique color, so there's that. So there's a lot of good cop cars. Even on the bad end, most of these are pretty decent, except for all the stuff in E tier. If you guys are working for a department in E tier, or you know somebody who's in charge of these liveries, please get on getting this stuff fixed. I mean, again, and I get it, like, speaking in actual terms, having this like all white cop cars, it's resource efficient, it's cheaper, you don't have to pay for as much paint and maintenance to keep that paint looking good. But oh my god, it's so boring. And specifically the ones in E tier, they look cheap. Ohio, you know, you guys need Iowa. I apologize, Ohio. I shouldn't include you in E tier, but Iowa, you guys need a better shield. Your shield's boring. You know, if you had at least an interesting shield, I could put you guys in the D tier. Obviously, you should have a little bit more paint or something going on just to make the car visually more interesting. But again, yeah, that's my opinion there. Nebraska and what was it, Missouri? Yeah, Nebraska and Missouri, you guys both look kind of cheap. You know, honestly, just get rid of the white outline for you, Nebraska. You know, just have it the white and black outline, or the white with the black drop shadows would make it look a little bit more professional. Stencil, you guys would move up that way. You know, Missouri, kind of the same thing for you guys. Just have the stencils, you know, cut out around the actual letters, not a box around them. That would serve quite a bit better, in my opinion. Kansas, again, pretty generic looking shield, but not the worst looking shield or anything. But yeah, because it's just a plain white car with a basic shield, you guys are definitely on the lower end. And you know what? Actually, I think we do need to make one final swap. We need to put Washington above Kansas, because Washington's is quite uninteresting just being black and white. And Kansas does have the color in there, but let's be honest, Washington has a more interesting symbol, and they've got the kind of the diamond or dash through their logo that a couple other departments have. It makes it a little bit more interesting, even though there's no color. So we'll put Washington above Kansas. But yeah, Washington, throw some color in your cop cars, mix up the paint job. Connecticut, again, put a vehicle out with a livery. Put out some marked vehicles. You know, I get it, your highway patrol, you're not necessarily going to be responding to a whole bunch of people calling you guys actively. But, you know, you guys represent the state. So having that is nice, and having like marked patrol cars and stuff, I think is useful for the community. Plus, it just looks better. All right, guys, I skewed a little political on a couple of those, specifically Connecticut, I think, but yeah, I don't know. Wait, what's your guys' tier? What do you guys think of this tier list? Let me know in the comments below, guys. Thank you all for watching. Take it easy. I will see you all in the next one.